Welcome back to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and this is my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 15, Table Stakes. Original air date is February 22nd, 2001. Director is Danny Cannon. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker, Carol Mendelson, and Elizabeth Devine. And I feel like I kind of want to guess at your Vegas score again. I feel like it's going to be pretty high because the entire opening is the Vegas Strip until we go to the party/gala.
So we have a Vegas score of 3.
Okay.
That's our official Vegas score for this episode.
Okay.
It is actually the third time we've had the same amount of seconds and the same number of scenes.
Okay.
In the same...
3 scenes?
3 scenes. It's
Yep.
13 seconds.
Okay.
I think maybe with like one other 13, like 114 or whatever. And that it works out the same. However, very similar to what I discussed previously, the episode has a lot of Vegas-y things in it. And there are at least 3 other times where there's 2 to 3 seconds of Vegas strip shots between scenes.
Yep.
And so I was like, man, I'm really going to have to figure out this Vegas score rule set before too long. I will say, I never really figured out what the name of the episode was a reference to, unless it's in reference to like the B plot.
I think it's in reference to the B plot.
Yeah, which I wonder if that was once a bigger plot. Like they were supposed to be a little bit more equitable or something.
Yeah.
And it went somewhere, or they were just like, we don't really have a good grifting gigolo wasn't a good title name or something. I don't know, but yeah, I remember I didn't think about it, but when I did the second watch through, and it comes up, I was like, oh yeah, what is the name of the episode Table Stakes about in this episode? Because there wasn't anything table related.
No, I assume it has to do with the B plot. So we focus in on a party/gala. The sheriff is there. He is greeting who we are told is Patrick at the time. And we learn that this is a fundraiser. And then Patrick's wife comes in. They claim, like, oh, we did it. Great job.
Could be girlfriend or fiance. I don't think they actually say they're married. Yeah.
Partner.
But they're smiling. They make out.
Yeah, there's a making out. And then we hear a scream. And then it is revealed that there's a body floating in the pool. A fresh body.
Yeah, body in the pool. It's a classic party murder scene situation. I think overall I was pretty surprised with this episode ended up.
As soon as this episode started and I remembered some of the twists in it, I was like, I wonder what Nick is going to think about this. Because I don't think I guessed it the first go around watching it by any stretch of the imagination.
Actually,
I've seen it enough times now that I was like, oh, right, this is this episode.
Spoiler alert, I have a all-star prediction.
Yeah, awesome. I can't wait to hear it. So we move on over to an officer removing the body from the pool. We then see Grissom, Jim Brass, and the sheriff. They are kind of standing around the pool. They're talking about Portia Richmond, who is the owner of the house. We then go to credits. We return to Grissom walking. We go to Grissom walking into Portia Richmond's house. He talks to the team minus Sarah, saying that they need to divide and conquer the scene because it's a large scene. We see, and this becomes very important later, but we see Nick kind of hovering around a fish pond, and he's very curious about like how much money it costs to feed the fish.
Well, you guys kind of know this about me, Lauren, but I am a aquascape water feature aficionado these days.
Yes.
And in the middle of constructing my own little waterfall. But yeah, those are definitely koi. It's actually really interesting. They're like these, or I don't know if they're actually koi, but these like bigger carp-looking fish. They're dark, but like I don't think feeding the fish are very expensive. But like some of those fish, like based on the size, if they're like really nice koi, could be worth like $100,000 a fish.
Yep.
But they do a classic switcheroo in these fish later on. The fish they show at this point are not the fish that are in there later. So
that become very important to the storyline later on.
I had to double check on my second watch through because I was like, I thought they showed a bunch of koi in there or something similar. But they are like really dark in color. Like I don't even know where they got those fish from.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's probably someone's like rich guy's actual house that they filmed at.
Yeah.
And he probably really has that thing with those fish in it, and he probably is just like really likes dark fish or something. So he got turquoise.
So during this kind of collection processing montage, we see Catherine finds a loose fingernail. We have a very gratuitous shirtless Warwick diving into the pool to find the cufflink, which has the initial CM on it.
There's a great hint at that scene that it's kind of relevant. They don't make a big deal out of it, but Catherine calls out, "Oh, the turquoise and silver. That's indicative of the Southwest."
Yes.
Which relates to Patrick's past.
Yes.
That gets mentioned later on.
Yeah.
I didn't get that the first time. I didn't recall that when we find out more about him. But when I heard it the second time, I went, "Oh, there you go." Good writing. I will say, like, this show, they do good at lacing information.
Yes.
In and out. When you watch it a second time, I've learned to really appreciate trying to pick up on those things, and that was one of them. I was like, oh yeah. I also, by the way, counted how many fingernails the person who has red fingernails on, which is Patrick's wife, and she is not missing a fingernail in either hand. So I think that was they don't really come back to, or they do, but like they don't really make a big deal out of it. But they do try to hide one of her hands, so I thought it was going to be on that hand for a long time. And then like one of the last scenes of the evening, I'm 95% certain you can see all of her fingernails. But it's small minor thing, but I was like, oh, it would be really good if I didn't notice. And because sometimes I think there was something where I was like, before I was like, yeah, I didn't notice that, but when I went back and rewatched it, I could have been like, oh yeah, she had 9 fingernails the whole time. Yeah. And I did it, but the color does match, so they did that, so that was good.
Yeah. We pop on over to Grissom entering the morgue. Doc Robbins is making a macchiato. We learn that the victim has had a decent amount of plastic surgery. We also learned that she was strangled, but she was dead before she hit the water. There was no water in her lungs, so she was dead prior to going inside of the pool.
We also learned that Grissom and the doctor are creeps, and they literally are checking out a dead body.
As they're serving macchiatos?
No, as they're checking out her plastic surgery, and they like lifts up the sheet to like check out her breast implants.
Oh gosh, I must have missed that. I must have blanked that out of my memory.
Oh my god, it was really bad. I was like, are you really checking out a dead body? I was like, the doctor was like, oh yeah, they they're doing much better than they used to, and I was like, wildly inappropriate conversation.
Like, don't talk about the victim that way. Let's show some respect to the dead.
Yeah.
So
Grissom has a line though. I think it's going to be important for my prediction.
Okay.
So he says when they talked to she was choked before she was drowned.
Yes, she was strangled. She wasn't drowned, so she was strangled before
no water.
She hit the water.
Yeah, no water in her lungs, right? And he says choking. That's a man's crime.
Yes.
And it's important because I've learned a thing or two about watching CSI. I may have cracked the code. They also request like a rape kit.
Yes.
Which is also an important piece of information that goes into my prediction.
Okay.
Actually, I'm trying to think if I made the prediction. No, I think it's during the next scene I wrote it down.
Okay. All right. Well, you can let us know when we get there. So Warwick gets pulled from this case. He gets sent out on a 419 in a glass elevator. Catherine then calls Sarah in to assist with the scene at Portia Richmond's house. We then learn a little bit more about Portia. So Jim Brass lets us know that she happens to take in strays, and this is where we're like officially introduced to Mr. and Mrs. Haynes. They explain how they met Portia. They claim that they don't know the victim, though. We, in the next scene, learn that the victim is Lacey Duvall. She is a showgirl/dancer. This is another, if we want to talk about inappropriate workplace behavior, you live in Vegas, or you at least work in Vegas. Maybe you don't live in Vegas, but you work in Vegas. Grissom is acting like he's never seen a half-nude woman before in his entire life. Like, he's standing there with his mouth, like, wide open, and Catherine has to be like, hey, man, shut your mouth, like, pull it together. And it's like, you work in Vegas. Like, you're in these scenes all the time.
Just walk down the Vegas Strip. You basically see the same thing.
Yeah, I don't understand.
And it doesn't really make any sense with, like, the next scene with the girl in the dressing room where he, like, doesn't seem to pay her any mind.
No, it doesn't.
Like either you're fascinated or you're not fascinated.
Yeah.
But maybe it's meant to say that, like, he can like check someone out, but then when his work is on the like when he's distracted by work, he shuts that all off. His work is more important than even that.
Yeah, maybe. So Catherine ends up talking to Lacey's friend. We learn that she was seeing some married guy, but he didn't provide much information on himself, and Lacey didn't give that much information about him to her friend. At the same time, Grissom is investigating Lacey's station. He finds a music box, which has an engraving that lets us know that it was for my beloved Portia. So, conclusion is, this is one of Portia's music boxes.
So I think this is when I made this prediction, which I may have made a false assumption that the music box was a gift. They never really proved that to be one way or another.
Okay, spoiler alert. I think the idea is that Patrick Haynes gifted it to Lacey.
Yeah, well, yeah, he definitely gifted her something, which they disclose later. But I didn't know if the music box, because it seems like Lacey might have been a bit of a thief herself, and so she might have done that.
I think Patrick tries to paint her as a thief, but I think that he gave it to her.
Yeah, it was very unclear, but either way, she does have it. Mm-hmm. And in this moment, I thought, okay, Patrick, he's seeing this girl, but I wrote, Mrs. Haynes killed her, and then I wrote, quote unquote, it's a man's crime. Also, sex kit. He means he had sex with her. In other words, I took the evidence they made a big deal about in the first scene, and I said, all right, that's the red herring scene, and they want me to think it's him. Yep. So I decided it was her. Yep. There's another part of the story that I do not get a good prediction on, which is their relationship to each other. Yes. But I never saw that coming. But I was just like, okay, they seemed adventurous sexually with their other activity, that I basically was like, okay, maybe he sees other people. I don't know. That seems a little progressive for the year 2000s. Yeah. Or he's just sleeping with her and she doesn't care, and she's just like, she kills her because sleeping with her husband. Yeah. And like, obviously he doesn't probably care that much. But I was like, because they made a big deal about it being a man's crime, it's not going to be him. It was going to be his wife. Okay. And spoiler alert, that was accurate.
That is accurate.
I didn't really think it was. I mean, I wrote it down, but I was like, I haven't had a really good prediction in a long time. So I was like, I wasn't really like as invested in it, I think, as I should have been. And then it turned out to be true, and I was like, yes. But also, all the information was right there. They told you that it was a man's crime, so therefore it had to not be a man. And then they wanted a rape kit, so that was obviously going to go nowhere, because if it went somewhere fast, then there wouldn't be enough episode left.
That's true. This is all happening very early in the episode.
Yeah, or the earlier on the episode, the more what they're trying to make you believe is false. And you have to think about what's the opposite. Yeah. Because they got to do the switcheroo. Yeah.
So we go on over to storyline B with Warwick arriving at his scene. He believes that it's a professional hit. There is a quarter in the victim's forehead, and supposedly that's like old school mob talk for call someone who cares.
Yeah.
After they have turned the lights off.
I remember people being like saying like would throw a dime at you if you were whining about something and say call somebody who gives a crap.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've ever heard that.
I mean, I'm aging myself because, first off, we're talking about, for those listeners who were born after 2005 or became young adults after 2005, I should say, there used to be things called payphones. You'd put coins in to make phone calls. Yeah. They don't exist anymore because everyone has a cell phone. They were pretty much on the downswing anyways because...
Yeah, I think so.
But they definitely don't exist anymore because people have cell phones. But they used to cost 10. I mean, they've cost different amounts through time, but for a very long time they cost 10 cents. Okay. And so a reference to like 10 cents to make a phone call or something like that, in reference to that, they actually cost 25 cents when I was a kid.
I was gonna say I remember being a quarter.
And then by the time I was a teenager, they cost like 50 cents or $1. Like by the time there were very few, and they would cost like $1, and you have to put like 4 quarters into a machine to make like a 3-minute phone call. But there also used to be this thing that you won't see ads for this on TV or YouTube anymore, but it used to be called collect calling, and so you used to collect call your parents when you were at like out of the movie theater or at a friend or somewhere you had to be picked up from there where it wasn't like if you're at a friend's house you use their phone, but you would be like it'd be like after the beep say your name and you'd be like, hey Dad, this is Nick, pick me up. and then it'd be like, sir, if you have a call from, hey, Dad, this is Nick picking me up. Would you like to accept it? He would just go, no. And then he would just come pick me up because he knew where I was. I was at the movies, or I was at like Boy Scouts. We'd always call after the meeting got out to come pick us up. But we didn't have to pay 30 cents or 50 cents or something to make a phone call. Also, I never had piles of quarters in my pocket. And if I did, they all went in to play video games at the arcade.
Fair. Very fair.
Yeah.
So we go to Grissom in his office. Catherine walks in. They have a discussion about why Lacey has the music box. This leads them to the thought of tradition. You know,
oh yes,
Eddie used to give Catherine a lace teddy on their anniversary or around their anniversary every year, and that was a tradition. And so that's what they think the music box represents. Is like the date on the music box is a specific date, and there's a tradition.
I think I hit the back 10-second button to be like, wait, did you say like lace teddy as opposed to like teddy bear teddy?
Yeah, no, a lace teddy. The important difference there. We then go to Sarah and Nick having a little bit of a walk and talk.
What am I, working food and beverage at one of the hotels? I haven't had a day off in 3 weeks. I mean, if they're going to call me in, throw me a bone. Give me the 419 on the elevator.
Someone's bitter.
I'm tired.
You? Tired? I thought you never sleep. Nice.
They end up going into the lab with Greg Sanders. There's just a very odd discourse between them, and Sarah ends up, walking out, and Greg is like, "Oh, you want a Valium for her?"
Did you hear the? I heard it really well the first time. It was actually really hard to hear the second time, but I already knew what she said. Because she shouts, you can hear her kind of softly shout, "I heard that."
Yeah.
But that whole thing with her being tired and angsty, coming on her day off, I don't really know what the point of all that was.
I don't know either. I have no
and then Xander's is like way too jazzed to be a juxtaposition to that.
Yeah,
and I was
I'm disappointed in that the fact that when I didn't look really ahead of time, I pulled it up right before we started recording, but this episode has 2 female writers.
Oh, yeah?
And this is how they're writing Sarah.
No, but there's a little thing in Hollywood called producers.
I know, but I'm just saying. It's,
and director.
I know. I'm not saying this is fully the writer's fault.
No.
I'm just disappointed.
I'm willing to bet that they probably didn't write it this way the first time. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why, I wonder if they wrote something, they cut something down, they cut something out, and then somebody over dramatized the whole situation. And then in the editing room, it just got even worse. The whole thing was just not on brand, I think, for the show.
I agree. It was not great. I was not a fan. Continuing on the music box theme, Catherine and Grissom are back at the house. They're looking through the collection of music boxes. As they're doing this, they hear thumping. And so they go upstairs to locate the source of the thumping, and they open the door to the Haynes having sex. And they realize that this was like a stage. They definitely wanted them to see them having sex, sort of.
I have one note here, which is I don't know if everyone who's watching this show for the nth time remembers this, but in the pilot episode, I believe there was a CSI agent who was shot by somebody at a crime scene and dies, and it's a really big deal. And the fact that you didn't call for backup.
Nope.
You didn't get anyone else. Somebody in there, Do you have a service weapon? Where is it? There's someone in this house who, and also then they don't reprimand them at all for continuing to live at the crime scene. They mentioned that the door seal wasn't broken, so they had sealed at the crime scene. They're still there. So it was they really just wanted to make the joke, right? But yeah, they are. It was I was hello, your show started about how dangerous being a CSI agent could be, and then there's a criminal in the house, and you're just I'm gonna be Superman, and I'm gonna go investigate a potential murderer, trying to hide evidence in the crime scene. And I mean, nothing happens from it, but I was just you are literally the supervising. If there's anyone on the shift who should be following protocol, it's Grissom.
It should be Grissom. Yeah.
And part of this, and then obviously the second most senior person.
Right. Which we're led to believe is Catherine. So, yeah. We then go to Sarah and Nick in the kitchen at HQ. Greg Sanders comes in. He's very excited because the semen that he ran matches a cold case from Texas 10 years ago. So this is kind of our first little taste of the backstory of one of our main players here. We then return to Grissom and Catherine at the house. Jim Brass walks in. The Haynes come downstairs. Jim Brass fairly is questioning them further about the whereabouts of Mrs. Richmond. And then there's another awkward... I feel like this is a Grissom is awkward and not in an endearing way episode for Grissom. He's staring at her as she's at Mrs. Haynes. She's drinking from the bottle and sipping through a straw. He's staring at her. He then asks for her straw and tells her that he collects them. Like this plain plastic straw. Like, at least make the straw fun or fancy.
Was there also another straw in a different... I didn't get this figured out in either way, but like he had a drink of the straw. I couldn't tell if he handed that drink to her or if he had his own. I didn't know if he was going to try to get both straws to have 2 DNA samples.
No, he just took her straw.
I mean, the Patrick had like a drink with a straw in it, and then he put down as well.
Yeah, but
on the table.
The straw that is referenced later on in the episode
is hers. Yeah.
So we then have Grissom and Catherine go upstairs to Portia's room. This is where they learn, like, her wallet is still there, her bags are still there, her swimsuit is still there. Like, it doesn't seem like she went on vacation. Like, everything that she would probably want to bring with her is there. So we get a montage of Grissom and Catherine searching the room. At the end of this montage, Grissom finds a tooth in the fireplace.
Yeah. Which is, I think this is, I wrote this later on, but I had this whole thing about this tooth thing is getting a little far-fetched, but they kind of bring it home at the end. So
they do.
I think I harshly judged it initially.
They connect the dots on this one.
Well, they very quickly jump to, oh, there's a tooth.
Yeah, she must be dead.
This person must have been murdered.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, hold on. People could lose a tooth in their house, although it does have blood on it, so it couldn't have been that old.
We pop on over to Greg Sanders examining the tooth. He needs a DNA comparison. Grissom and Catherine are kind of like, well, get it from the comb and the toothbrush. But then we learn that the comb and toothbrush are completely clean and there's no DNA samples to pull from there. So this allows for a little field trip with Jim Brass and Catherine when they go to the Liberace Museum. Which
I have been to Vegas many times. I have not been to a Liberace Museum.
I have not either.
But I will next time I go now. If it still exists.
I have no idea.
I guess it's 20-something years since that episode was filmed.
What I keep doing, and I need to get on a better schedule, is the second watch through of the episode I do on the same night that we record. Mm-hmm. So even when I'm like, oh man, I should like really do some research into that, I don't have time between watching the episode and then coming on here to record. So I really need to schedule my watchings a little bit better so I can do some research. I
did tonight. It often depends, like when we're recording and when I watch the first time. But if I do, like, I'm fortunate enough that I work from home and I could typically get off pretty early. So it's like usually I'm watching it the second time from like in being done like an hour before we record. Mm-hmm. So if I see something and I want to pause it, and I still have time, but tonight I had other stuff I had to do, so I there was like one time where I was like, I kind of want to look something up here, but I didn't. I didn't know if there was a spot the guest star with Mrs. Haynes.
Okay.
I think
like
she looks
familiar.
She looks very familiar. Okay. And I couldn't remember if she was from anything. Like I know I looked at the IMDb afterwards. I didn't recognize her name. Because I thought she looked kind of familiar, but then on the second watch through, I was like, I should look at IMDb and see what she's in. I bet she was in something that I've watched.
Okay.
Maybe I'll look it up, and we'll get an update at the end.
Yeah, we'll get an update at the end. So the curator guides them to a headpiece that belonged to Portia. We learned that she lost all of her hair wearing this headpiece because of the glue and the pins and the clips and everything that needed to keep it on. But that means that it's a DNA treasure trove, and Catherine is going to be able to, hopefully get some DNA from this. We then have Warwick going, he gets the personal artifacts from the victim, I had to use an exclamation point question mark here that because CSI is very weird about ages of victims. This victim was supposedly only 35 years old.
Oh, really? Did they say that?
Yes. They were like, oh, he's 35.
No,
he looks like he's like
50?
50 something.
Yeah.
I was like,
If you told me he was 60, I would believe it.
yeah, I was like, there's no, and maybe I'm saying this as someone in their, late 30s, that I'm like, I don't look like that. That's not what I look like. Maybe that's a little bit of it, but there's no way that
I don't have
that guy is 35 years old.
Yeah, I don't have any friends over the age of 35 who look like that unless they are also over the age of 50.
Yeah, no.
Like,
no way.
Yeah.
So CSI is very weird when it comes to ages of victims. But
see, now I'm going to go to IMDb and look up how old this guy
how old
was.
that guy is, yeah. And so Warwick also finds casino credit markers that belong to the victim, and then we learned that the owner of the gun, who the gun was registered to, is a one Vincent Morgan. The detective comes in and lets Warwick know that. We then go to Sarah getting a hit on searching on Patrick Haynes' social security number, and come to find out it belongs to an 8-month-old infant who died 10 years ago.
What was the name of the victim again?
Warwick's victim? I don't know if I jotted that down, to be honest with you.
All right.
I don't know if they ever... I'm sure they did give his name at some point, but I don't know if I jotted it down or not. So we then have Greg Sanders dancing around with a headpiece on. This headpiece that supposedly needed glue and pins and needles.
Belongs in a museum. It's a museum piece.
It's a museum piece. He's just dancing around the hallway with this headpiece on, giving zero cares, which, rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. And this is, again, I'm not going to fully blame the writers. I understand that they write something and then it gets edited and then producers change it and yada, yada, yada. But then Greg goes to Catherine and is like, oh, did you ever wear anything like this? And she's like, oh, I wore nothing but skin. Not appropriate work conversations. This entire department needs an HR intervention.
It starts at the top, right?
It does. But we do learn in this scene that the DNA is a match. So the tooth belongs to Portia Richmond, which is only seeming to confirm the fact that they think that she is murdered. We then have Warwick talking to the registered gun owner. We find out that he was robbed. He didn't report that the gun was stolen because he had already told his wife that he got rid of it. That's kind of the end of that investigative line of the story.
Yep.
It kind of ends there. We then have a very quick scene. Well, we kind of jump back and forth to the scene, but this is the initial scene with... Oh, no, this is a different one. Never mind. Scratch that all out. So, Grissom, Catherine, and Jim Brass at a restaurant. They're watching the Haynes couple, and then they see Mrs. Haynes steal a fur coat from another patron of the restaurant. Then we go to Jim Brass and Catherine interrogating... Oh, Grissom is there as well. Interrogating Patrick Haynes. He does admit that he had sex with Lacey before the party. This is where he implies that Lacey is the one who stole the music box. He didn't give it to her, she stole it. I think he gave it to her. That's just where I'm coming from. I could be wrong. Nick walks in and pulls Grissom away from this interrogation. So Grissom goes out in the hallway, and he is angry. He is really angry at Nick for interrupting this interrogation, especially because I guess there was a sign on the door that was don't interrupt this interrogation, and Nick interrupted the interrogation.
I think rightfully so.
Yeah,
I was expecting a much bigger piece of information than Nick gave.
Well, so we learn that the real Patrick Haynes is deceased, and that the suspect in the interrogation room that is saying that he is Patrick Haynes is actually Chad Matthews, who has an outstanding warrant for a murder in Texas. So that's the news that Nick wants to give to Grissom. We then have Grissom meeting with the sheriff in the casino, and the sheriff wants to know, does Patrick have anything to do with Portia's disappearance? And the sheriff is all up in arms about this because Portia helped get him elected, so it's very important for him to know what happened and to get the story correct. So then we go to Grissom and Jim Brass. We learn that Chad Matthews has had 5 different aliases, and he has a habit of targeting rich older women as his victims, and that Portia was on his list of potential victims. We then go to Catherine, Sarah, and Nick talking. We have a weird who foots the bill conversation where we learn that Nick will cover the bill unless they ask him what kind of car he drives, because then that means you're a gold digger and the only reason you're interested in him is because of his money. And
I do feel like that was a thing, like, a while ago, like, when I was younger, was, like, this notion that, like, if a girl asks you what kind of car you drive, she's interested in your money.
Oh, see, I mean, I guess okay, maybe and this is going to sound like a brag. I swear, I promise it's not a brag. Maybe because, other than I think like one instance, I have always significantly made more money than the people that I've dated.
Yeah.
That was never.
It's also
like that was never a question for me. You know, like that was never a leading question in my opinion. I might want to know, like, do you have a car? Because, like, if we live a certain distance away, the only way that we're going to see each other is that you have a vehicle.
I want to know that
really
you have.
care what kind of vehicle you have.
I also want to know that you're going to rely on me for transportation. You know,
Right.
like
Right.
you're not going to be a negative equity to my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things are much more important. But there's sort of like gold digging. Like I don't know. I think most people. I think largely media is beyond that sort of stereotype these days.
I think so. I'd like to think so.
I mean, there are people out there, regardless of what you look like, who are interested in living off the people they are in relationships with, but, like, they are not there's no plurality to that.
No.
It is a sliver.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we also learn in this interaction that the check was forged. There is and this would probably be around this time, there was a hanging Chad joke, which I
I'm glad you wrote it down. I'm glad you wrote that. I have that in my notes.
I was like,
I said, what a Bush v. Gore reference. It was a well crafted reference.
It was a well crafted, because they're like, oh, his name was Chad, like a hanging Chad. Like, it was good. It was solid. So they walk through the mechanics of showing how the check was forged. And then we go back to storyline B. Warwick doesn't think that he's going to be able to close the case. We learn that one of his only possible other avenues of maybe finding the killer comes to an end because the fingerprint on the quarter comes back to the victim. So
yes.
They were like, well, that's not going to help us.
Which is like extra calling card too.
Yeah. And then they definitely make a point to illustrate and highlight that the victim was a gambler. Like, it's a big deal how much of a gambler he was. Warwick is really kind of harping on this.
And I think you're supposed to see Warwick seeing himself in this guy.
Yes. Oh, 100.
Like I could have been this guy. Yeah, I have questions with the final scene, by the way.
Oh, okay. Ooh, all right. Yeah,
I didn't know what to make of it, and then all I could think of, I like went back after the credits started. I was like, did I miss something again this time?
Yeah, you're like, what did I miss? So this is the scene I thought was a little bit earlier, but I got it confused. So we cut back and forth to the scene a few times with Jim Brass, Sarah, Catherine, and Nick out.
Oh, at the dinner table, yeah.
Yes. So we kind of cut back and forth. So this is the initial them sitting down and eating, and then we see Grissom at the scene. He's back to looking at the fish, and then a gardener, I assume. I'm not quite entirely sure.
Oh, I just closed. I had IMDb up, and yeah, I think he's Gardner is his official.
Okay, so I think the gardener tells him to, like, watch out, and they don't. I know why they say that because I've seen this episode so many times. I wonder if that is clear to somebody who is watching it for the first time about why he shouldn't be that close to the fish.
It definitely was to me like, oh, they're going to be flesh-eating piranhas.
Yeah.
Because also piranhas eating people was a big thing in the 90s too.
That is true. It was definitely a trope for sure, 100%. So we pop back over, quick scene with the team, kind of discussing the case over lunch. We then go to Grissom looking at photos of the victim along with Doc Robbins, and we realize that in the strangle pattern, a fingernail is missing. Dun, dun, dun. Dun.
Which they didn't really establish that fingernail belonging to Mrs. Haynes, but I think it's very obvious.
Oh no, they bring it back to it being hers
later on, but they hadn't like her fingernail is very bright in color, very prominent in the first few scenes.
Yes.
And they don't like talk to her about it. They don't mention that they found one other than to have Catherine stare at a fingernail. I didn't mention this earlier, but I laughed how long she stared at a fingernail
Yes.
on the ground.
Very determined.
As if she couldn't figure out what it was.
What is this strange contraption? We get back to the restaurant. We kind of realize that the reason that the Haynes have stuck around is that they were waiting for the checks to clear for the 1.6 million that they raised. So they were just going to pocket the fundraising
They have
money
control of
of
Portia's
her
bank accounts.
Yes.
Which actually, on the second watch, I realized they kind of they don't really get into it, but they kind of set it up where it's like, oh yeah, we met her, and then we were living with her, and then like throwing the fundraiser, they were like, oh, that's one of the things we could do for her.
Yes.
And like, if she was really in Europe, and spoiler alert, she was not,
Spoiler alert.
then you could imagine she would have actually given them power of authority or control of that bank account so that they could manage the fundraiser and do all that.
Yep.
But instead, we've already established that they forged her signature, so they've probably just used forgery to, get control of the money.
Yeah. So they also discuss, which is very important, and we do get the answer for this, but like, why kill Lacey, right? Like, if you just laid low and
Yep.
waited for the checks to clear, they could have bounced out of town with $1.6 million and, made a new life for themselves. Why kill Lacey?
At such a well-attended public event.
Yes, that is also important. Yes, not like off to the side you killed her. You murdered her in front of dozens and dozens of other people.
You actually choked her to death, so it takes minutes to do that. So,
Yes.
which they don't really show in the
No,
reenactment.
they have it happening in like 3 seconds, which I'm like, that's not enough time to strangle someone. It
I had to
takes a while.
I had to pay attention. Like, she didn't die of a broken neck. She died of being choked out, I guess.
Strangled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she had a broken like hyoid bone, so
Yeah.
like this,
Crushed her trachea.
Crushed her trachea. Yeah. So Grissom then asked Greg Sanders about the fingernail. He said that it's not Patrick Haynes, which Grissom was like, oh yeah, duh. But then he does say that it has half DNA markers in common, which means that it's a direct relative of Patrick Haynes is who the fingernail belongs to. And so Grissom gives him the straw and says, hey, run it against the DNA from this straw.
Which good luck convicting someone if you've held onto the straw for 4 days without filing an evidence.
Exactly. Wasn't it an evidence bag? He just like pulled it out of somewhere where it was like, here we go. No gloves or anything. Just handed over the straw. So we then go to Jim Brass, Catherine, and Warwick with Chad Matthews / Patrick Haynes. His wife, quote unquote, enters. And this is where Grissom points out that now he can see the family resemblance because they're not a married couple. They're brother and sister.
Aww, how Game of Thrones of you. Well ahead of your time.
Yeah, way ahead of it. This is a super progressive show, way ahead of its time.
Well,
And-
to be fair, I think Game of Thrones is getting close to 20 years old.
Oh gosh, you're probably right. No, it's not that. It's not as old.
Oh yeah, it's like 10 years earlier than
Okay.
Game of
Okay.
Thrones.
I was gonna say. I was like, there's definitely some time in between these two shows. So we learn that the sister is the one who killed Lacey. We see in reenactment, and it was all because she didn't want to be cut out of the deal. She didn't want her brother / husband to grift her, and so she killed Lacey to take her out of the picture.
Can we talk about the fish? We have to have a science
I
with
literally
Nick
was gonna
moment.
say- my next line is literally Grissom unveils fish.
Yeah.
Literally, my next line is Grissom.
Oh, is that when he does it? Okay.
Yes.
I thought they confessed after he unveiled it.
No, because she admits to killing Lacey, and then they ask again, "Where's Portia?" And they're like, "She's in Europe, like on a yacht, blah blah blah." And then he unveils the
And
fish
did you write down what Grissom says to them?
about the fish having high cholesterol.
Yeah.
Yes. So the fish have high cholesterol.
Let's talk about-
But fish don't have high cholesterol. Humans have high cholesterol.
No.
So how do fish have high cholesterol?
And they say the fish have cholesterol, and they say, but here's the thing: every animal has cholesterol.
I thought he said high cholesterol, and he said that fish don't have high cholesterol.
I mean, they can if you feed them. If like feeding them cholesterol, they said like human. They said fish don't have human cholesterol, right? Is what the line is.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no difference between cholesterol and species. It's a general molecule.
Yep.
It's used by a lot of species. Every cell of your body has like 2 layers, and in between those 2 layers is nothing but cholesterol.
Yeah.
There's so much cholesterol in every fish. It is crazy. Maybe not always all the same types of cholesterol, but I was like, what do you mean there's no cholesterol in fish? Everything that's alive, like all animals, like plants obviously not, but although mushrooms have cholesterol. Yeah, it has cholesterol.
I'm excited to play my mushroom druid on Saturday.
Oh yeah, I don't know if it's gonna make it in, but I saw you may be trying to win some dark feathery dice on a giveaway on Twitter. So
yeah.
I'm rooting for you. That would be cool.
You guys can follow me at Firefly Musings on Twitter if you wanna follow my personal account. I don't post that often. I generally retweet dice postings and hoping of getting pretty dice for D&D, but occasionally I post stuff on there too. So just feel free to give me a follow if you want to.
You can enter the same following and then try to win the dice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we won't give you a P.O. box to send it to, but...
No, we don't have a P.O. box. So if you guys decide you want to send us stuff, let us know.
Maybe
we'll get a P.O. box. But
if you win it, you can DM us and we'll ask for some evidence. And
we'll figure it out.
We'll consider.
Yeah.
We'll find a way.
Yeah. We're not going to give our addresses out, though, so sorry about that, guys. But
I live at 1400 Pennsylvania Ave.
So that's the end, or the wrap-up, I guess, for Storyline A. We then go to Warwick in the casino. He's talking to who I assume is like a pit boss and letting him know that the victim is not going to be paying up his dues because he's dead. The pit boss very poignantly tells Warwick that it's a good day to gamble because I guess there was like one team that kept winning, and so he looks at Warwick and he's like, it's a good day to gamble. And so
I have to think that if they know, like, I have to think that if Warwick is as degenerate of a gambler as they have painted him to be in the show, then every casino pit boss in town knows him, right?
Yeah.
And so they know he also hasn't been playing, and so they're enticing him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great day to gamble.
Yeah.
Even though you're on the clock.
Yeah, I know. Even though you're working. So Warwick is walking through the casino because, of course, if you've ever been to a Vegas casino, if you want to get anywhere in a Vegas casino, you have to walk, or like in a hotel, if you want to get anywhere you have to go through the casino, basically. Yep. You can't get to anything in Vegas without walking through a casino, is what I'm trying to say. A very long-winded
It's
way of
intelligently designed that way.
Yes, very purposely designed that way. So he's walking out of the casino, and we get this kind of spinning shot of him, rotating shot of him, and as the shot is rotating around him, we're hearing voiceovers. So we're hearing lines said in earlier episodes related to Warwick's gambling. So Sarah saying that he has a problem, Eckley saying that he had someone cover for him because he was gambling, Grissom saying, hey, do what you want to do on your own time, but when you're here, you're working, and that's the end of the episode. And I know you wanted to talk about this, so let's talk about it.
I don't know if I'm supposed to assume he's gambling that night or not.
I think you're supposed to be left with that question.
Okay.
I think the point is, for a few episodes now...
It's a cliffhanger.
I think for a few episodes now, they've been going out of their way to remind us that Warwick hasn't gambled in a while. Right? They keep being like, he kept being like, oh yeah, like in the old days when I used to this, and like, oh, when I used to gamble, and so they've made it. And
this episode has a billion references, right?
Yes, and this episode has multiple references to it, and so I think we're not supposed to know the answer to that question at the end of this episode. I think we're supposed to be left with, he very well could gamble because gambling is such a strong pull, but maybe he doesn't.
I couldn't tell it's interesting. Like, I hope that's what they were going for, because I found myself saying, like, are you trying to tell me, like, that he's, because at first I thought he was gonna walk out and it was going to be like a conquering moment. Like, oh, I don't want to be that guy. Like the guy who just died in an elevator.
Right.
I'm listening to the people around me.
The 35-year-old man that looked like a 60-year-old. That's
Yeah.
not who I want to be.
Who, by the way, the dead guy's name was Tyson Green. The actor's name, I think, is William Patrick Johnson.
Okay.
If I figured this out right. He has been in like 8 things his entire life.
Okay.
And nowhere could I find a date of birth or age for him.
Okay.
So he's not popular enough for anyone to have asked that question and written it down.
That's fair.
On the internet, at least. But the other side of the coin was, or am I supposed to take the spiraling metaphorically, the spinning shot as like a spiral, in that his addiction,
yeah.
he's hearing all of these things that people have said to him.
Yeah.
But the thing about addiction is it doesn't matter. That's what makes it a disease. Is it a mental illness? You cannot help yourself.
Yeah.
And is he spiraling out of control in that moment? Are all these things nostalgic to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it could go either way. And so, yeah, I'm assuming, maybe I'm reading in a little bit to the fact that you've seen other episodes, that maybe you know that the storyline is continuing and that Nikki will find out more next week or 3 weeks from now or something. But, yeah, I'd much prefer if the intention was to leave you wondering what is he going to do. Because it does do that. But, for a second I thought, it almost felt like they were trying to go somewhere with it and then they didn't. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And that's why I said, this was another one where, I had to hit the back. I think I said this earlier. I had to hit the back button and be like, did I miss, did I glance away and miss something? Because it just seemed like it ended. I think I was writing something down in my notebook. And then it went to credits and I, stopped and I was like, wait, what? What did I just miss?
Yeah. All right, well, ambiguous ending or not, what did you think about this episode, Nick?
This episode's kind of a mess. I'm not over the moon on this episode. I felt better as the episode went on, but I got really distracted by Sarah being tired and Xander's being crazy. I enjoyed that. I actually enjoyed. I thought at first I thought it was going to be a single plotline story again. I think they did.
Yeah, and you were like, ugh.
They did okay with the second plotline. There wasn't a ton there.
Yeah.
I mean, they never found the killer. Right?
No.
It's just but that's the way it goes sometimes.
Right.
So, but I don't know where I'd rank it. It's definitely not towards the top. It's not on the bottom.
Yep.
But it's closer to the bottom than it is to the top. So.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. It's okay. It's not great. I apologize guys for my dog barking. Yeah, so I'm there with you. This was it's an episode. I think they did Sarah dirty. I do not like how Sarah is portrayed in this episode.
She's barely in the episode. They bring her in, and what does she do?
Yeah, just complain about wanting a shot and how tired she is, and she might as well. They should have just kept her out of the episode. Honestly, I would have felt better. I mean, I would have been bummed to have not had her in it because I do like her character a lot, but I would have preferred her just not be in this episode versus how they treated her in this episode. I wish that they invested a little bit more into storyline B. I'm glad that there was 2 storylines. I'm glad this was not a single storyline episode, but I feel that the second storyline definitely could have gotten a little bit more attention to it. And so I'd say this is on the lower end for me as far as episodes go.
They very quickly move through the guy with the registered gun. I felt like maybe they were going to have more, and
and they just were eh.
They did a reshoot and we'll do a 30-second, a 5-second clip on the strip where they're like, oh, your house is broken into. Okay, I guess you're cool.
Yeah,
we just believe you. Go back to valeting cars.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. We're not going to investigate this any further. So, all right. Well, next week we will be back with Season 1, Episode 16, Too Tough to Die. In the meantime, you can find us on Facebook at a CSI podcast. You can also find us on Twitter/X, Instagram, and Threads at CSI You can also email us at whoareyoucsipod@gmail.com, and feel free to use the hashtag whoareyoucsipod if you'd like to get our attention on social media, or get other people to pay us attention on social media. Both ways, we would appreciate it. And so we will see you next time.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.